thank you for joining me. I'm Tom Loucks, Communications Director, City of Marshfield. It's council preview time. Thanks, Steve, for coming.
Good to be here, Tom.
All right, as usual, we're going to go through the Common Council meeting. This one is for November 24th, 6 p.m. That's on a Tuesday, and open to the public. And we have some things that we'd like to discuss. And right now, COVID is a piece that I think we need to address.
Yeah, you know, Tom, COVID-19 is going into its 9th month, and I think a lot of us, when it broke back in March, thought, well, you know, it'll go through the spring and maybe into the early summer, and then we'll be able to move on. And yet here we are, and the number of cases is steadily, if not rapidly, increasing across the state of Wisconsin and Wood County. And so just like a lot of business owners and a lot of individuals on their own deciding about, you know, can they make trips, you know, for Thanksgiving weekend or whatever, we're looking at the data and trying to make our best decision. So anyway, what happened was, Tom, there've been a lot of people at City Hall, and I think our other facilities too, who've been unable to work because of being quarantined. Maybe they don't have COVID-19, but they've been exposed and they've been contacted and told that, you know, your friend or your brother-in-law or somebody has tested positive, and so you need to quarantine for 14 days. Well, that's starting to take an effect on our workforce and the availability of our workforce. That plus the growing number of cases led me to think between two council meetings that I really wanted authority to be able to work with our department heads to close facilities as needed, to try and protect the health and safety of our staff and the public as well. So, you know, I went into these waters and I thought we could just do it by proclamation, the way we did back in March when it first broke, but kind of found out what Ed Wagner had pointed out before, that there was an emergency committee that's set up to hear this. So we had a meeting of that committee. They felt it's reasonable, and the mayor signed a proclamation, again, giving me the authority as city administrator to control the access by the public to our facilities. We've since closed down City Hall, effective here shortly as we tape this. The library's made a decision, and maybe others will too. But the action item for council on Tuesday night, Tom, is looking forward. All the proclamation is intended to do is get you to the next council meeting. And so we're there now, and do they want to continue it? Do they want to expand it? That's going to be the discussion we have with our elected officials on Tuesday night.
Okay, so we'll hear from them on their decision, but right now, as we're taping this and people are going to be watching this, we're taping on a Wednesday, the official opening or closing, I shall say, for City Hall to the public would begin on Thursday.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about what that means too, Tom. You're going to walk in and you're going to be able to get through the first set of doors coming off of Chestnut. You're going to see signage, but you're going to be allowed to open those doors. You're not going to be allowed to go to that second set of doors where you would normally go to the counter to get a building permit or a dog license or whatever. You're going to see signage. You're going to see a lot of blocking off to show that we are not available. The signage you're going to see is going to talk about where to call, talk about our website, how to access our services remotely. And we do apologize for this. We know that a lot of people like to come to City Hall in person. The one caveat to this, Tom, is that people can call and set up an appointment to meet with a staff person, because when you walk in the door, you are going to be able to turn to the left, you know, with meeting a staff person, and go to a conference room to meet one-on-one. Maybe you need to show your plans for building a new house or whatever and have the building inspector look at it. But our goal is we want to keep nobody into the secured area, because we are really trying hard to protect, quite frankly, the health and safety, first and foremost, of our staff, so that they can continue to do the work of the city of Marshfield.
All righty. And you do ask people to wear a mask, correct?
We do. We do ask that people wear a mask unless you have some medical reason why you can't. And again, it's to protect not only you, but to protect the safety of all those involved. And we really encourage people to take this seriously. I know that there's a lot of views about masking, but we are really in a crisis position right now. We need everybody's support to try and get through the current pandemic.
All right, we'll find that out on Tuesday. Let's talk about a fee schedule. That has to do with fees.
Before we leave COVID,
sure.
I'm sorry, before we leave COVID, let's talk a little bit about the meeting schedule. If you remember back in April, we went to all remote meetings. So it was all Zoom, and then we started kind of working back into the routine of council and staff slowly coming back into the council chambers. And now we're back at the point of saying, okay, we're all meeting in person again, the council and the committees. Do we want to go back to all remote? So that one will be at the discretion of the council, Tom, although I will be encouraging them to strongly consider going back to remote. Now, the public will still be able to see this through Facebook Live or YouTube or some means, but we really want to try and minimize the gatherings, the larger gatherings that we have of people during this heightened phase of COVID-19.
All right, so they still will have a chance to do public comment some way?
Yeah, it may be through emails or letters, or certainly you could always call a staff person and say, could you represent that I live at 305 Elm Street and I'm concerned about this policy you're talking about. I'd like to see it not passed. But we're not sure what the actual verbal that we're going to be able to get. We're still working on that, but you'll always be able to communicate with your public officials.
All right, well, we'll have that pretty much ready of where we're going with that. No matter what decision's made right now by the council, I think you'll have that information set and we'll get that to the public. All right, anything else, Steve, on that?
That's it. Be tuned in, though, because COVID-19 is a very fluid situation. It changes from day to day. I'm sure if you watch the national news, you know that. So please stay up to date on the latest with our website and the platforms that Tom, you do a great job of managing.
All right, thank you. Now we'll talk about the fee schedule.
All right.
What's that about?
Well, about 4 years ago, I think it was, when our Development Services Director was Jason Angel, who has since moved on, he had the vision for why don't we create a fee schedule so that people at home, contractors from their workplaces, can go online, they don't have to call City Hall, and they can say, well, look, I need a building permit for a fence, or I need to pay for a variance to apply for something to allow me to build closer to my neighbor's lot line, and they can find out all the various fees and charges we have, what they are, without having to contact City Hall. Now, don't get me wrong, we don't mind when you call us, we don't mind when you email us, but this would be a way at home or at a business workplace to find out all the fee information you need. So we did that. Well, then every year we have to update it. The costs increase, the staff costs, inflationary costs, and so the fee that might have been $50 in 2017 might now be going up to $60. So what Josh is doing as the Development Services Director, he's worked with all the departments that have these fees and said, look, do you need to increase anything for 2021? Is there a basis for that? Bring it on, and let's bring it forward to the council and say, look, here's the new fee schedule we want you to approve for 2021. So two things for the public. One, take a look at that, go online and see it and say, look, I think this is unreasonable if you think that there's something out of whack. But secondly, know that during the year, this is a document you can go to see information that you can get all by yourself without having to call City Hall at all.
All right, well, that document currently for the fee schedule for 2020, if anyone's interested, is on the website. And they can find that if they just search fee schedule.
Yep.
I know they can find that there. So
Thank you.
I do think, though, the city departments, including Josh, are taking COVID in perspective of raising any fees this year.
Yeah, we're trying, and I know that there's been some concern raised. We'll be talking about taxes in a minute with the budget, and we're trying to do our best. We have some financial challenges, but we do respect the fact that people have been furloughed. Maybe they've lost their jobs. If you're a small business owner watching me right now, maybe you had a big drop in revenue there for a while. Maybe it's still a struggle. So we want to be reasonable, but we also want to know that the people who are responsible for those fees, they're asking us to take certain actions, that they're paying for that cost. Maybe some of the things you're asking for need to be published in the newspaper. Well, that cost goes up. We don't want all the taxpayers to pay for it. It's specific to your request. So we want to make sure that we're appropriating the cost properly. But we're trying to be reasonable. We understand people are hurting at this time.
All right. Well, let's talk about refilling positions. Chris Hawley, our street superintendent, people have moved on to other jobs or moved in the area, but to refill any position, there has been a change, correct?
Yeah, there has, and this was back in October with the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee, Tom. The committee said, you know what, with our financial condition right now, and again, we're not alarmists, we're not in a crisis here at the city of Marshfield. We pay our bills and we pay our employees, but we have a structural budget deficit we're working our way through. It'd be good to evaluate every position before it's refilled. So if a person leaves, they want to see that department head come and say, you know what, position X, the person left, he took another job or retired, we think you need to refill this, and here's why. Here's all the important things this position does, and then the committee might say, well, couldn't you combine it with another position? Isn't it possible to combine the accountant with the payroll person or whatever? And we can have those discussions to make sure that we're being prudent before we go out and advertise. And it just so happens that Chris Hawley, the street department, has had several retirements and resignations in the last couple of meetings, so he's had to come forward a lot and be heard by the committee. In this case, he's looking for an equipment operator 2 and an equipment operator 1. But the committee felt good about it, so they've recommended to the council that they authorize it. We'll see if the council agrees. My big point in all this, Tom, is that the public needs to know we are being responsible. I don't want them reading in the paper or hearing on the radio or seeing on the news that the city is going to increase taxes. Well, yeah, why don't you just not rehire these people? Why don't you just, save the money? That we are looking at all the positions as they come due before making the decision to refill.
All right. And some of that may not get to the council if that decision is made by the department head and you.
True. In fact, we've had that happen before. We've had a couple of instances, one of which was in the finance department, where a person was a part-time person in finance and then left it to take a full-time job, another job with the city. And the finance director said, I think we can hold that position open for a while and let's see if others can absorb the work and we can make it function. And here we are, 3-4 months later, and we're still doing that. In other circumstances, there might be a chance to combine duties of 2 jobs. So we do look at that at the staff level before ever bringing that forward to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee.
All right. Well, let's talk about the CARES Act. That's a big thing for us to get some monies back from the state or federal, but I believe we're doing the state here.
Yep.
And I'll just kind of piggyback on the airport's plan to get a credit card reader. That could be paid for by the CARES Act. Is that right?
That's correct, Tom. It's a great deal. The CARES Act, and the airport piece is kind of separate from the city proper, but they were able to get some money through the CARES Act, and they'd like to use it on a credit card reader. And the committee thought it was great. I think it's a great idea. We'll see what the council thinks. The bigger picture, though, as you said accurately, is the CARES program in general, the state program, has been reimbursing the city for most of its expenses with COVID. So some people might think, oh yeah, the city's probably really hurting. Think of all the money they've spent on supplies and equipment and elections. We've gotten reimbursed for the lion's share of it. Not everything, but this program has been great to say, you know what? If cities are incurring costs to try and keep people safe, healthy, protected against this terrible coronavirus, we want to support that. So to date, it looks like we're going to probably get about $200,000 plus in reimbursement in total from this program for all the expenditures we've made in police, fire, a clerk's office, whatever department it was, and we really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, that definitely will help you, or help the city, I should say, and help you with your in budgeting, even in 2021 and beyond. That money is going to go to the general fund. Is that how that works?
Yeah, it generally does. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about, if it's been spent by fire department, why doesn't it come back to the fire department's budget? And, we get that, but all in all, it all kind of ends up coming out of the same coffers. And we can tell people if it looks like, hey, why did the fire department go over budget this year? Well, we got back X thousand dollars from this that they spent, and they knew in spending it that they were going to likely get the reimbursement. So it's not like the fire department, and I'm just making up the fire department right now, it's not like they went off script. They worked with us to make sure that we could get some expenditures that were going to be reimbursed or likely to be reimbursed. And I got to say, we have great department heads here, and they've been wonderful to work with on the CARES grant.
Well, this wouldn't happen unless it was you, city staff, department heads putting this together. We hear it all the time from the state or on the federal level, even the President of the United States saying, there's money's available. That's true. But if we don't go after it, those monies just don't come in. So staff has to make that happen.
They do, Tom. That's a great thing to point out. And oftentimes when we hear grants from the federal and state government, we think of all sorts of strings attached and lots of paperwork. I don't have time to fill out 40-page forms. Ron Allman, our finance director, has done a marvelous job. I'm not saying it's been easy for him to collate this and to fill out the required paperwork. But the impression I get from him is it's been a pretty good program to work with. Again, they've funded almost everything we've submitted to them, and they've given us the money in a fairly reasonable time frame. So, I mean, unlike a lot of federal and state programs that get bogged down, this one's been pretty effective.
All right. Lease extension was made in a closed session. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. We've been in closed session for a little while talking about a possible lease extension to Weinbrenner Shoes, located at 305 West 3rd Street. They've been there for a long time. A lot of people maybe have seen the building and not even know what it was. It's a shoe factory, and they employ a lot of people, and they're good-paying jobs. Well, the city had a 20-year lease for them, and it expired last year. And then the thought was, well, they're going to buy the building from the city, or what are we going to do? Well, they've not indicated an interest in buying the building. There's some challenges they have with that building in terms of their growth and expansion, but they would like to stay in the city of Marshfield. So we've been trying to work out a lease agreement that would work for them, and we thought we were done 2 weeks ago, kind of signed on to something, and now it turns out there's a little piece that they had a question on, a valid question that they'd like taken a look at, and maybe a slight modification made. But it looks like we're going to come out of this with a lease in the range of 3 to 5 years, during which time they would look at other options in the community, and we would help them. Our development services staff would love to try and assist them in finding another location to build or to operate in an existing building that might be vacant, to keep those good paying jobs and that excellent employer here in the city of Marshfield.
That building located here, 305 West 3rd Street, is owned by the city, correct?
Correct.
What was it before Weinbrenner? Do you know, Steve? I'm just curious.
I don't know. They've leased it for so long. I'm really not sure the history. I should probably know that.
Yeah, I'm just curious why the city actually owns it to begin with.
Yeah.
It's over by our street department, though, pretty close.
It is, and that brings up another topic, Tom, and that's the West 2nd Street corridor.
Yep.
The West 2nd Street corridor, the goal of that project has been to extend that part that goes from Chestnut to Maple and extend that to the west and make it a nice tie to draw people into our downtown. We have a beautiful downtown. And then the project kind of stalled out a little bit, in part because with Weinbrenner and with the Public Works Garage, those are 2 huge facilities. The thought was, well, could we ever do a major redevelopment of that part of town? Well, we may never be able to, or it may be a ways out for all we know. But those pieces are at least being talked about. That we did a space needs study on the street department, and they did recommend that one of the options is to look at building elsewhere in the community or finding an existing building outside of downtown. So right now we're trying to help a great employer stay here and grow here, but ultimately it may play out that we have an option to try and, someday maybe redevelop the northwest part of downtown.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that as things progress and they accept the lease. We'll finalize that maybe in our next meeting if that happens.
Yeah,
and
hopefully, it seems like we're pretty close, and they've been great to talk to, and hopefully we'll be able to extend their time in the current facility if it works out.
Okay. And then we'll, like I say, work with Josh if they're down the road 3 to 5 years looking at a possible move within the city, one of the new districts that maybe have, or current one, a business park. I think it'd be good for people to see, but we don't know yet. So,
and one of the things to follow up on that, Tom, is that our development services staff does really well. Josh Miller, Bryce Hembrook, Emmett as well, is to try and find places where people want to be. Hey, if this area's not working for you, hey, what about the business park? What about, can we help you find a vacant building that might suit your needs? We're in the business of trying to keep good employers here and grow them. And so we'll do it whatever we can to help the company if it's possible.
all right. Anything else on the 24th Common Council agenda?
I don't think so. It's not one of our heavier agendas, as you could tell, which is probably not bad given all the meetings we've had, the special meetings, including the budget meetings. But, more business to transact before the Thanksgiving holiday.
All right. Well, right after that Thanksgiving holiday, right on that Monday, November 30th, we have another Common Council meeting. They do call it a council meeting.
Right.
But this one is about the budget, right? It's a public hearing.
It is, and normally the public hearing and adopting the budget and tax levy occur at a regular meeting, so it's kind of folded in. You're going to look at this agenda and you're going to say, this really is the meeting, and the answer is yes, it is. We'll start out with a public hearing where we want to hear from you, the public. Now, we're going into COVID-19 restrictions, so you'll hear more information about that, but you'll definitely be able to communicate with us, send us an email, make a phone call, send a letter, with any thoughts, issues, concerns you have about the budget. And it can range from anything. I say this every year, Tom, but it doesn't have to be where you've worked it all out. Some people think, well, if I want to spend $50,000 on the park next to me, what am I going to cut? I don't know what to cut. Just give us your ideas. Give us your thoughts about what you're hearing with the budget, what's being funded, all these things, and we'll take your thoughts into account, and the council and the mayor will hear it. But we'll have the public hearing, see what public input we get, and then after that, the council will be able to discuss it and say, well, based on that information, or anything else that we know of, do we want to look at modifying the current proposal? Do we want to amend it? Do we want to do something to change what's on the table today, which is what came out of the November 9th meeting? And then after that, it will be ultimately, presumably, a vote to adopt the 2021 budget and tax levy as presented or as somehow modified that night.
Well, for those that don't know, that decision was already given by the council. Again, it's not final until they vote on it. what is the plan? What is the current tax rate that the council has right now proposed or adopted?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, Tom. First of all, the budget itself, we have about a $22.6 million general fund budget. And I say general fund, that's the core services we provide. The total budget is 40+ million, but that includes wastewater, EMS, and some other things that aren't considered the base level services we provide. So 22.6 million. And with the changes the council has made, and they've really pushed staff to try and sharpen their pen a little bit, and we worked with them. With the changes, we are right now at a 0.5% decrease in the amount of money, the actual dollar amount we're going to spend. Last year it was 22.6 million. This year it's almost getting closer to 22.5 million. So we definitely have tried to be mindful of the expenses and the public looking at us. Having said that, I think you know this, we have some challenges in the budget based upon some past things with TIF transfers and whatnot. Inadvertently, we've held the tax rate artificially low, Tom, for almost a decade. So we're looking at a tax rate increase of 7.4%. And I know that sounds like a lot to our viewers. It would bring us from the current 9.54 per thousand to $10.25 per thousand. But if we were able to do that, if the council holds firm on that as they've suggested, that will move us a long ways toward where we need to get. It'll have us fully funding our debt payments, which we haven't done for nearly a decade, without transfers in from other funds. And it will help us reduce the general fund deficit somewhat. It'll put us in a much more manageable position for the 2022 budget and beyond. But the council may have some final thoughts about that. They may have some concerns about that they wish to bring up on the 30th and modify that somehow, and that's their purview.
Well, it's important on several reasons, and one of them is credit rating, correct?
It is. Right now, we're looked at Moody's a little bit lesser than we were a couple of years ago. They dropped us a grade a couple of years ago, and then last year, they put a negative outlook on us. So in other words, the credit rating we have, Tom, has a negative outlook that says, look, if you don't take some steps in the next year or two to deal with your structural budget deficit, you might go down another notch. So people at home are saying, so what? It goes from an A1 to an A2 or whatever. Who cares? It doesn't affect my life. What it means is we probably will get fewer bidders on our bonds for our annual borrowing for street projects and other things, and flowing from that will likely end up with higher interest rates. And as Ron Ullman, our finance director, will tell you, that means we might pay tens of thousands of dollars more, maybe even more, in interest payments over the life of those bonds, simply because they didn't think we had our house in order. So getting to a better place is important not only for our taxpayers, but for the rating agencies who rate our bonds.
Exactly. Let's talk about the tax bill. So the residents, the homeowners, I should say, that are watching this understand what's going to come in that tax bill. Again, we're only a little bit over 1/3 of the tax bill. And then there's the county and the school and mid-state, is that correct? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. The city is 37% roughly of the tax bill, and the county, the school district is roughly the same. So the school and the city put together make about 75%, 3/4 of your tax bill. The county lesser, and then I think they're around 20, and then the Mid-State Technical College is around 4%. So when you get your tax bill, you're going to say, well, it's all because of the city, good or bad. It's not. You have to look at each taxing jurisdiction. And my understanding is what we're hearing from the county and the school district at this point suggests that their tax rate increases may be fairly low. And as a result, the city's increase may be tempered quite a bit, which would be good. We'd like that timing to work out well. But ultimately, that'll be what goes into your tax bill that you receive. So look at that portion. Don't just look at the total amount. Look at where it came from before you raise your questions and concerns, because you'll see what every individual jurisdiction is doing.
Well, let's just, I know you talk about the importance of it and why it has to be done, but some people are asking, it's a pandemic, why?
Yeah, I know, and some of our council has been asking that. We have people, again, who've been furloughed or, taking a hit in their small business or whatever. And we don't like this timing. We really don't. You mentioned it a minute ago with possibly increasing fees for licenses and permits and stuff. This is more, hits harder at home now, more with tax bills. But we're at a point right now where like I said, we've been underfunding our services for quite a while. We didn't realize that. We didn't do it on purpose. If we could go back, Tom, we'd increase the tax rate every year by 1 or 1.25%, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But we didn't realize that. We were using funds that we really shouldn't have used to balance the budgets. No money was lost, there's nothing missing, but we should have been doing it differently. So we really need this catch-up to get back to where we are. We're hopeful that the public will see this in the light of what it is. You're not going to get a 7.4% increase every year. We're going to get ourselves back in a good position here as a result of this. But it's something we could do over a period of 2 or 3 years, but I think the council is making a wise decision to say, let's take the pain, let's get to where we need to be honest with our taxpayers, tell them the story, trust them to understand, and then move forward in a more strong position going forward.
All right, well, I'll just ask you another piece. If this all goes through on the November 30th, what is in the back of your minds that you're going to tell staff to keep these costs so they don't go up?
Well, that's a great question, Tom, because the last thing we want to do is increase people's taxes and then say, well, just go ahead and spend money, No, a couple things. First of all, we're really looking at overtime, trying to minimize that. We're looking at trying to minimize travel and training budgets where we can. We still want people to be up on their jobs and what they need to do to improve efficiency and save cost. And we're also going to look at expenditures. Do they all need to be made? So just because you budgeted so much money in 2021 for something, if there's ways you can find creative options to do it differently, do it. We're not just looking to spend money that's been allocated to us, we're looking to spend money that we really need to. That goes back to the positions being refilled. We're not automatically going to refill positions. We're going to look at whether or not there's opportunities to do other things. Maybe it might be commingling two positions, maybe it might be something doesn't need to be a full-time job, maybe it might be something we can contract out. I'm not suggesting any of these things at all. I'm not saying that we have more employees than we need. I don't believe we do. In fact, if you look at our full-time equivalents, we really haven't increased staff, Tom, since 2010 in a meaningful way. We run pretty lean, but I want people to know that we're evaluating the kind of things that they would expect us to evaluate to be prudent, going along with what we're asking them to do in terms of a tax increase.
And if our citizens want to know our neighbors, I think we're getting closer, although they're ahead of us in the tax.
They are. I think that I need to update on what the 2021 proposals are going to be for Wisconsin Rapids, Stevens Point, and Wausau. But it looks like we'll be pretty commensurate with Wisconsin Rapids and Wausau, and a lot lower than, with Stevens Point and Wausau, and a lot lower than Wisconsin Rapids. At least that's based on the 2020 data that I saw from last year.
Okay. I just want to go over a couple terms that people have heard and maybe see in the newspapers. Just to clarify, a mill rate. They're going to hear this and see that. What is that?
Yeah, that's the rate per thousand of value that you pay. So the rate we've been operating under right now is $9.54 per thousand for 2020. So if you have a house that's valued at $100,000, theoretically, apart from school and lottery credits, you'd be paying $954 in city tax. And you say, no, my tax bill is way more than $954. Again, it goes back to school, county, technical college. But that would be the city's portion. So it's $9.54 per thousand of value on your land and your property, your buildings.
And that is figured out by assessments, is that right?
Well, the value is done by the assessor, yeah.
Okay.
And you can appeal that at the board review process every spring. And the tax rate is set by the calculations of how much we need to fill the gap to run the city's services.
Okay. One last thing, equalized value. What's that mean?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Good question. When you do a revaluation of all the property in the city, theoretically you get to 100%, which means if we say your house is worth $175,000, it really should be worth very close to, if not exactly, $175,000. As time passes, we sometimes fall behind on that. And a property appreciates maybe by 2% or 3%, and maybe your house value hasn't changed with the assessor. So the state tracks that. And the state will say, look, city, you're not at 100% anymore. We think you're at 97% based upon the numbers you're turning in. And we're down now under 90%. So in the next 2 or 3 years, Tom, you're going to hear talk about a revaluation, which is an attempt to get into as many homes as we can, if not all of them, and see what's going on. And see, do you still have 3 bedrooms and 2 baths and all this stuff? And try to revalue the homes so that that value that you're being taxed on is correct. What happens from that a lot is the value of properties tend to go up, but the city doesn't collect more. What happens is your mill rate, your tax rate goes down, but you end up paying the same amount of taxes. But we need to do that for equity reasons sometime in the next 3 years or so.
All right. Well, as it gets closer to that, I'm sure we will be talking about it here on this program. Anything else that you want to say about the meeting on the not 24th, but the 30th, end of the month?
Yeah, really just this, going back to our COVID conversation, you may hear about restricted access, meetings aren't going to be held in person or whatever. We're not trying to cut out public comment. Contact me. My number might be on the screen here. I'll give it to you. It's 486-2003. That's 486-2003. And say, Steve, I've heard about this restriction of the meetings. I still want to give public comment. I still want the council and the mayor to know my thoughts. We're not trying to restrict that. We might ask you to do it by email or by telling me so I can send them an email, or we read something at the meeting. And we want that to be the case with the budget too. Feel free, and please do give us your budget input on what we're planning to spend and tax. We want to know.
All righty, Steve. One last time, I will tell you if you give the time, place, and when the public comment piece will happen for addressing the budget to the council.
Well, the budget meeting is being held at 6 p.m. or after the Board of Public Works meeting, if it's not done by 6 p.m. on Monday, November 30th. And what we would likely do is ask that you can get any comments to us by noon on Monday the 30th. You can go to our website. Our email addresses are there, or call City Hall and ask for the email addresses, or just call me with the number I just gave you before and say, Steve, I want to weigh in. Tell me the options as far as how I can get my comments to the elected officials so that your voice is heard.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. We better wrap up this program here, and we'll come back yet in December, see where we're at, see how that went in the last two meetings. We can highlight a little bit of that before our next council preview meeting, because there'll be two common council meetings pretty close to each other in December.
We'll have them on the 8th and the 15th.
Yeah, so we'll see where we go from there. Again, I want to thank you for watching Council Preview with myself, Tom Loucks, and Steve Barg.